Hey folks, and welcome to this video in the Profile Builder series. We'll see how to control the Rhapsody user interface by defining perspectives. Now, perspectives provide a way to customize the UI based on maybe a role or a level of experience. We can use them to control the right-click menus, the main toolbars, drawing toolbars, and lots more. Now, the Profile Builder ships with an example set of perspectives. Profile building minimizes the UI to show only the most useful options when we're building profiles. All removes any filtering at all, and empty UI demonstrates the extreme of removing every possible menu and toolbar from the UI. The only things left are the items that Rhapsody refuses to remove. So let's create perspectives for our network profile. Now, perspectives are all property-based and certainly not something you want to write by hand, but fortunately the Profile Builder makes it very easy. I'll start by creating a new perspective set. Let's call that Network Perspectives. Now, that will end up being a property file, so let's make sure it gets included in the main property file. To do that, I'll open a property file diagram and I'll drag that perspective set on, and then I'll include it in the root PRP file with an includes perspective set dependency. Next, so we can work graphically, let's add a perspective diagram. And now we can add perspectives. Let's add two. We'll have one which we'll call networking, and that's going to apply some filters to the UI. And we'll have another one called no filter, and that will give us the option of removing any UI customization and returning to the default user interface. Now, note that as these end up being entries in property files, you cannot use spaces in the names. Rhapsody will not allow that. Since I'm not going to model no filter in any way, I don't want to apply any customizations in that perspective, I'll just remove it from the diagram, but it is still present in the model. Before we start applying any custom filters, let's look at the tags for the networking perspective itself. Now, here we can find some global options for that perspective. Let's set it to be the default perspective. And we'll also have Rhapsody show a hint on that perspective toolbar when a new model is created. Let's also hide the common and the free shape drawing tools from every drawing toolbar. All right, let's try that out now. I'll click Save. That generates the property files. We'll look at those a little bit later. But first, let's create a new Rhapsody project based on the network's profile. There, the default perspective is networking, and it shows a hint that filters are being applied because of that. The drawing toolbar over here on this diagram has no common tools and no free shapes. Let's change the current perspective to no filter, and there both of those drawing toolbar sections come back. Let's switch back to our profile building project and we'll start applying some more filtering, start building out that perspective a bit more. Now, there is plenty that we can do here, but let's start by filtering out the main toolbars. So those are the toolbars that you can see across the top of the Rhapsody UI here. I'll create a new hidden toolbar collection. And let's call it hidden networking toolbars. It doesn't matter what you call these things. I'll include it in the perspective using a hides toolbar relationship. Now, to decide which toolbars are hidden, which is done through the tags. That lists out all of the Rhapsody toolbars. Let's hide code and let's hide Rhapsody Model Manager. Now let's test that. I'll save to regenerate the property files, and then I'll reopen the project we created a moment ago. In the no filter perspective, we have all of the standard toolbars, but in the networking perspective, we don't. Okay, back to the Profile Builder. Next, we can filter out tabs in the features dialog. Now, we can do that for any new term stereotype or any base UML term. Let's add a hidden feature dialog tab collection I'll call it ports. In the tags for that, we have all of the tabs which could appear in a features dialog. Let's select all of the port related ones. Let's also add a second one, and we'll call that details. In that list, I'll hide, let's say, attributes, value, properties, and operations. Now let's add both of those collections to our perspective using a hides feature dialog tabs relationship. Now to apply them. First, let's drag on a stereotype from our networks profile. Let's use printer. And I'll add an applies to relationship from both of those collections to that stereotype. Let's also customize the features dialog for a base UML term. Now those can be modeled using this meta class model element or a meta class list, both of which we've talked about previously, both of which are reusable library elements. Let's hide the details collection from the features dialog for use cases. Let's now save, and we'll switch back to the user model. Now to test that, we need to add a couple of artifacts. First, we're going to add a network into this model. Then we can add a printer into that network. And lastly, I need a use case. I can add that by adding a use case diagram and simply drawing one. Now, if I'm in the no filter perspective, then the features dialog for a use case is as usual. I have tabs for ports, operations, attributes, and so on. If I switch to the networking perspective, the attributes and the operation tabs disappear. If I select the printer, that has no attributes, no port tabs, no operation tabs, and so on. They're all gone. But if I switch back to the no filter perspective, all of those tabs come back. Okay, back to the profile builder. Let's now customize some of the right-click menus. I'll create a new hidden pop-up menu collection. On the tags tab for this element, there is a long list of every available right-click menu that Rhapsody has. Now, the idea here is you create your own set of hidden library elements and then use them in your perspectives. Same for these other artifacts. You create libraries of these things. To save myself some time, I'll reuse the ones I created earlier in the profile builder itself. So I have a predefined model browser filter to only show pop-up menu collections. And there then we can actually see the ones defined in the profile builder. Now between them, these collections cover all of the available pop-up menus. Let's drag on two of them. Let's drag on code generation and let's drag on advanced features. And we can then add them to our perspective using a hides pop-up menus relationship. Once again, we'll save it to generate the property files out, and then we'll switch to the user project. In the no filter perspective, if I right-click a printer, I have menus like change to, refactor, edit order of types. At the bottom, I have generate code and edit code. If I switch to the networking perspective and I try that same right-click, I have a much smaller set of options. Now, there are lots of other things we can control from a perspective, such as blacklists of terms, drawing toolbars for specific diagram types, the main menus at the top, and more. Now, all of that is covered in the hands-on workshop that ships with the profile builder, so I will leave it there. But before we close out, let's take a look behind the scenes at the property file that was generated for that perspective for this profile builder model. Now I'll right click the root PRP and select profile builder and choose to open that file with its includes, and there is the file that was generated for the perspectives, the network perspectives PRP file. Now even just for one perspective, it's quite long, it's verbose, and it's certainly not something you want to maintain by hand. Well, that's it for this video. In the next one, we'll take a look at conditional properties.